Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Thanks for joining me today. We want to talk about one more preacher that I have known that you would not know. He's just a country preacher. His name was Floyd Gross. This man grew up in Virginia, Bedford, Virginia. He served in the military in World War II, and was after the war that he came back to Bedford and then ended up going to Bible college and getting training. He pastored a short time in Virginia. But when I knew him, he was in a little country town called Carlisle, Indiana. Carlisle was a dead town. It was small. It was people set in their ways. There's not a lot of people around the area either. But he pastored there for over 20 years. And while he was pastoring there, it's when I began my ministry, or I got saved. And so there are a number of times that we met and associated. I preached for him, one of the first places that I ever preached. And here's a man that was faithful, even though he did not see great success like a lot of people would think is success. But he saw young people go into the ministry and start another church out of his church. He had a way of using discernment. And as a young preacher, he definitely influenced my life. I would get some ideas of things that maybe weren't quite on target, and he would have these one-line quips that sort of set me in my place. And he thought things through. He had a vision and saw what was right, what was wrong. And I assume probably the high time of that church, they maybe ran in the 50s. But he was very faithful. He felt called of God. And, God used him to influence several people, not only in the church, but even beyond the church, just like myself. So, I look back at my life and I think, boy, I could have easily veered off in the wrong direction, gone in some of the more modern ways, changed the music. Music was certainly changing at that time. It was the era of rock and roll. There was churches changing their music. So it was sort of the beginning of some of those issues. And, there's a lot of things come down the pike that you think, well, maybe that's a good idea. He had already thought it through. That's not a good idea. So I really appreciated the fact that he was stable, he was faithful. He didn't miss the mark. He just kept going. And in some ways, a gloomy little town like that people didn't like to change, it could be easy to get discouraged and just say, you know what, I quit, I give up. But he felt called of God there and was faithful. He had a great family and a large family. After that, he stepped down from the ministry just because of health reasons. But he lived to be almost 100, just a few months before being 100. And I think it was only a year or so ago that he went home to be with the Lord. But when he was in the hospital, he took every opportunity to talk to every nurse, every doctor, give them the gospel. Whoever would listen to him, he would talk to them about the Lord. And, there's a certain part of Virginia, a rural area that, they kind of have their own not a different language, but the accent is very unique. And, he had a very unique accent, the way he spoke. And he had a very distinct voice, and I can remember that till this day, how he would say certain things that would really get your attention. And I think there's an awful lot of people like him that have given their life, their whole life, to just serve the Lord, do what they can in an area, pastor an area. I mean, there are pastors in remote areas, like in Alaska. There are people, you have to fly into those villages. Quebec has these little villages, and just hardly anybody's reaching them. They're stuck in their tradition, their customs. Anybody comes in is obviously an outsider. And there are people who feel called of God, and they go to a place, spend their life. That's their ministry. And I give them a lot of credit. They're not in the limelight. There's very little notoriety for who they are, what they've done. But somehow I have to believe that God has something special. When they stand before him, some of these people they're going to be ahead of the line from others that may have more notoriety. So I can really appreciate the ministry that Brother Gross had and how he affected my life, how he challenged me about some of the new ideas coming down the pike and some things that he helped me stay stable. So it's not someone you would hear, but I wonder how many men out there are just like him. They're just faithful, serving the Lord, doing what's right, holding the fort, taking a stand, trying to help young people, trying to direct people to serve God. And, when it comes down to it, that is really what it's all about. So Floyd Gross is a hero in my eyes. I greatly appreciate the influence he had on my life. It was somewhat limited, but it was very impactful, what he meant to me. And so I hope that you realize wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, if you're in the will of God and you're surrendered to the Holy Spirit, that is his work. You don't have to be the biggest, the largest, the fastest growing. Just be faithful, and God will bless you for it.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend. You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.